Kanye West is definitively taking the most unpopular, risky positions you could take in today's hip-hop culture, regardless of where you line up. For people who've been living under a rock, have you listened to the recent Kanye album, the gospel, the Christian album? Have you been following his recent sort of conversion to Christianity? What's your reaction to it, genuinely? And I want to hear from you. Let me know before you respond. Are you a Christian? Are you an atheist? Because we've been seeing a lot of responses from the left, from the right, from people who you think might support him, from people who you think would be antagonistic. It's been pretty surprising, and hopefully this helps you sort it out. So for those who don't know, obviously he opened the weekend with his album Jesus is King, I think it's called. Yeah. And it's an entirely Christian album, and he explained it to Jimmy Kimmel, for those who missed it.
We have Christian innovation in our time. There was a time when the Medici family and all the greatest artists did work for the church, and now it seems like all the best designs and everything have this adult edge to it.
How much you want to bet he just learned who Medici was?
Yeah.
He's like, yo, listen, I want to use the word Medici, on that interview. But no, I'm going to be fair here. There's been some controversy over the release. He asked those participating in the recording, actually, to not engage in premarital sex.
Wow. How dare he?
And he himself, this is one thing that I will say is definitely a positive thing. He went on to talk about the negative impact that pornography had on his life, and even spoke out against abortion.
Yeah. Democrats had us voting Democrats for food stamps for years, bro. What is you talking about? Guns in the 80s, taking the fathers out the home, Plan B, lowering our votes, making us abort our children. God should not kill. I can't tell y'all how to feel, but what I can tell you honestly is how I feel.
I love how the interview's like, yes. What do you mean? There's nothing deep there. He's just like, I can tell you my opinion. Yes. Preach. He didn't tell it to you yet.
Yeah.
So there have been a wide range of reactions. Obviously, you have some on the left, they want to effectively cancel Kanye West for this overtly Christian message. But then you have some conservatives on the right who've been celebrating him as this sort of figurehead. And then you have some other people who've been trashing him. Some people have just been kind of cautious, as they were after his pro-Trump tweets. Let me tell you one thing, because I mentioned that I think this takes balls because Kanye West has something to lose. So we'll get into some details here as far as what the recent transition has been. But eliminating potty mouth and basically condemning premarital sex, not exactly super popular in the hip-hop community. And
go over well.
In case people are saying, well, you're generalizing, I want you to look at Billboard Top 100, pick any song from the hip-hop community and pick any of those artists and see where they would line up on those issues.
That's right.
Yeah. That being said, I'm not jumping on a bandwagon. I've always been a fan of hip-hop. When this show used to be on the radio 5-6 years ago, for years, the very last segment, The Bump, was All of the Lights from Kanye West. We've done multiple parodies of Kanye West. We've always talked about how I think in the past, I've thought that he acts like a jackass, but the guy is a brilliant MC. He's very talented. Here is something I want to get out of the way first. I do think there's some danger in exalting and sort of this hero worship of people who are new Christians.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I want to make sure that nobody does that. That being said, the reason I'm saying that is because I want to see someone like Kanye West develop in his. I sound like him, Kanye West.
Kanye West.
There's a T.
I want him to develop on the spiritual journey. I think there can be a lot, even if you're not a Christian, he can have a huge positive impact. I just don't want to see someone who is not equipped to do this yet thrust forward as a mouthpiece. It'd be like tossing an amateur to the pros. And I will say this, the album is pretty good. And it's not his best album, certainly not his worst. And it's certainly comparable with all of his other albums that would be considered, more secular. I was worried about it. I thought it was going to be like, Jesus loves me. Yeah, yes, I know. Why, Kanye? Because the Bible tells me so. I think we're seeing a genuine conversion experience here. And again, we don't want to thrust someone into the spotlight and give them, I guess, we don't want to turn them into an authority figure.
No.
But we certainly, I don't like it when I see Christians or conservatives saying like, oh, well, now he wants to change all. Yeah, listen, that's why everyone, Christian here, that's why you need Jesus.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you need Jesus, because we're all a work in progress. And if someone doesn't feel as though they can come out with their faith publicly without being attacked from all sides, it's just going to discourage people all around. Something else I think that's pretty interesting here, he's expressed not only his Christian faith, which is different from a lot of people who say I'm a Christian later in life in Hollywood, and it's this sort of agape, God is love, and it's the trees all around us. No, he's talked about rejecting the leftist atheist ideology that dominates his industry, the entertainment industry, which I think is ballsy.
I told him, I said, look, my father's a Black Panther. My mother got arrested for the sit-ins at age 6.
It's early.
They were fighting for us to have the right to our opinion.
She was
Not
just
the
sitting.
right to
She was
vote
mistaken.
for whoever the white liberals said black people are supposed to vote for.
Yeah.
So I think this is important because the guy is definitely going sort of, if we talk about sort of Kurt Cobain, who hated conservatives back in the day, right? But he was sort of in this, he was steeped in this nihilism, right? And this sort of overall negativity and hopelessness. Do you think he would have still supported the left if he saw them today being the anti-free speech sort of authoritarians that they are?
Right,
At least Kanye has the balls to point that out. And I think there are two important points here as it relates to his sort of coming out, if you will. Right now, before we get to Christianity, he's living out a statistic that we've talked about on this show. It's undeniable. As people age, as they get older, they gain more life experience, they always become more conservative. And this is regardless of socioeconomic status, even across races, though it still is comparable. You're talking about it in a relative way. Black people still are overwhelmingly Democrat, but they become more conservative as they get older in individual policies. People get married, they become more conservative. They have kids, they become more conservative. They pay taxes, they become more conservative. The only place where it doesn't happen, ironically, is the entertainment industry because it's this weird time warp, like you see with child stars. Neverland. They never grow up. It stunts their growth. So that's point one, and you can come in a second. Point number two, often when we see celebrities come out as born-again Christians, we know this as Christians, you're like, please don't say something crazy. It comes on the heels of a bender where their choice was do so much blow that you would end up in a ditch and be in a tabloid or accept Jesus. Right? And it usually comes, or some form of religion. But it's usually accompanied by some level of insanity, like think Lindsay Lohan with a hijab and the like.
Oh my gosh.
With Kanye West, we're seeing the opposite. Someone who's been known for being kind of crazy, and he's actually lucid right now, able to articulate his beliefs. He seems to be becoming more humble. Like we're seeing a new and improved Kanye, which is the exact reversal of what you often see with people who are new converts. And for an industry that's this sort of hell-bent on this idea of tolerance and forgiveness, it is ironic to see them rejecting a guy who really isn't going out there being judgmental. He's offering free Sunday services, and he's still doing what he's always done with his albums. By the way, hit the notification bell. Just bookmark the YouTube page if you're here, because notifications don't always work. New video every single day at 9 o'clock Eastern. I always forget the time. I forget the time because I'm playing the game. Another point here that I think is sort of people have missed out on. Here's how I would describe this, okay? And forgive me, I know I'm a Christian, but I'm a very flawed Christian, so I know people say, well, you're a Christian, you're about to use this naughty word. Yeah, apparently I use naughtier words than Kanye West. We're seeing the un-assholing of Kanye West right before our eyes. We're going to turn that into a verb. He's
proper word
un-assholing. Remember the VMAs when Kanye stole the mic from Taylor Swift? Who can forget this?
I'm really happy for you. I'm gonna let you finish. But Beyonce had one of the best videos of all time.
Oh, dang.
Kanye, stop.
One of the best videos of all time.
Awkward.
Now, listen.
What do you do?
At that point in time,
well, I said it.
It doesn't behoove us to say that he was anything other than a jackass.
Right.
He was a jackass.
Very much.
But more recently, he seems to be more humble, seems to be more grounded. And I think this is kind of an interesting study because you have Taylor Swift now coming out as pro-LGBTQ AAI PC. I forget the acronym.
You're skipping to the P.
Pro-abortion, anti-Trump, and anyone who disagrees with her, she lumps into the category of hater.
And makes a song about it.
These people are hateful. She's turned into the sort of this egomaniac that Kanye used to be. Taylor Swift has never met a safe position that she didn't like. Again, Kanye West is holding himself out there right now. Taylor Swift, when she was doing country music, right back in the day, it was Teardrops on My Guitar, it was Vanilla, it was Romeo and Juliet, it was small town America, singing in the country church. Only when she decided to move over to pop, and she has her lesbian-cutted chain gang from BuzzFeed and HBO's Girls, did she decide that she was going to be pro-LGBTQ, which, by the way, can only help you in your career. Compare that with Kanye, who is in the hip-hop community, where he's banning potty mouth and saying you shouldn't do drugs and have premarital sex. Taylor Swift has always taken the position that would benefit her when she was in country or when she's in pop. Kanye West is definitively taking the most unpopular, risky positions you could take in today's hip-hop culture, regardless of where you line up. I have to respect that, and I'll not doggy pile on someone for doing that. Speaking of which, actually, I think, do we have another clip? Yeah, he was asked, Kanye, if he's afraid that he'll be canceled because of his, specifically the Christian album. I liked his response.
Are you afraid of losing your audience? Yay.
I told you I'm only
There's an
afraid
edit.
of God.
Yep,
I'm
that's
afraid of my
definitely an
daddy, God. I done been 15 years. I'm telling you, God is showing that you can have your own thoughts, bro. I've been canceled before there was cancel culture.
Because without Jesus, even Reese's can't go with pizzas. Ha! I just have all these Christian rhymes.
So good.
It's just, so
It's
many
just
years in
there.
this group.
You need to be a little more breathy, though.
Yes. I love, by the way, for people who don't know that edit, like we were talking about this, he wasn't necessarily edited out of context.
Yeah.
But this is a common editing technique that to me is so insidious because people don't even see it. If you interview someone and you ask them a question here, and then they answer here, and they start talking and they get more passionate, and then they start talking up here, but you edit it so you ask your question here, and then you go back to him, bro. Talking like this about Jesus. It looks like he's crazy.
Yeah.
That's clearly not where he answered that question.
My gosh.
The thing is, though, his Christianity doesn't seem to have hurt the album sales. It's probably going to debut at #1. And what does that show us? It shows us there's a disconnect yet again between critics and fans, the people in the music industry, like we saw with what Knock Down the Walls 100% and Nanette 100%, or next to Citizen Kane on Rotten Tomatoes, and then fans can't stand it.
Yeah.
We're seeing this now with critics and people saying, oh, this is a real risk. Well, it's not a risk with fans. And I think this mirrors a lot like Jordan Peterson is a good example, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
There's kind of a definitive, these sort of boundaries that are established in academia, right? It's completely dominated, just like with hip hop. There are certain expectations. And then they say, I'm keeping it real. Oh, come on. You weren't shot 19 times in the face, and you don't have gold rims. You drive an F-150 with tinted windows because you don't want to be recognized. Not all of them, but there is some fakery. Because there are expectations, right? And Jordan Peterson was in an industry, I guess for lack of a better word, academia, we'll call it an industry, dominated by liberal postmodernists.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Jordan Peterson, just one reasonable professor comes along, and suddenly his videos have millions of views.
Yeah.
Professors would have told you that can't work.
Right.
You can't go up against the grain. You can't be someone who's more conservative or preaching, I don't want to label him a conservative, preaching an individualistic point of view, preaching a pull yourself up by your bootstraps that you can actually control your own fate. You can't do that and just upload it randomly to YouTube and expect to do well. Well, it turns out people actually wanted a psych professor to teach them how to improve their lives and telling them, instead of telling them that they were a victim of patriarchy and that they should dye their hair pink and wear a pussy hat. Similarly, Kanye's album seems like it's filling a cultural need. And I know Gerald A. is going to disagree with me on this.
Wait.
There's been Christian music around for a while.
Oh, I know where you're going.
It's bad. It's mostly pretty bad because it's mostly Christian bands mimicking secular bands, and it has like a niche submarket for. I play this game on the radio called Is It a Christian? It's just called Christian Radio Car Game. That's what we call it. And when my wife and I, we travel to a new state, or we're in a rental car, we hit scan on the radio, and I only have 3 seconds to guess if it's a Christian radio station. I have like a 96% success rate.
That's understandable.
Because either if the word fountain, or solace, or rescuer, or if they have that breathy voice, or the girls who kind of sound like Lord but not really. It's just like there is a sound and it's crappy, and it's trying to use sometimes a marketing gimmick. And this, I think, shows us something right now. His album is doing really well. Yeah. Right? And it's an all-Christian album. It's a gospel album. It means that a lot of people, like myself, I have every Kanye album ever, they liked Kanye West for his music in spite of some of the graphic content or maybe the cultural content that they didn't agree with. That was me with Kanye West. And so I think whereas critics thought, oh, they like Kanye because of these sort of subversive words and this adult, to use Kanye's term, content. No, people liked him for his music in spite of that. And I think that this is going to create a bit of a reversal in the minds of a lot of executives. I think it's a healthy thing. And this is one thing I was talking with someone actually at a church recently about this, this morning. This is one thing that's always bothered me. It's why we do this show. Okay, I'm not holding myself out as an example for Christianity. I'm very open about my faith. I think everyone here is. But you have sort of two worlds with a lot of Christians. Yeah. They go to church, and then everything looks nice. Right? Everything looks great. You don't hear any naughty language at all. And people sort of talk about their trials and tribulations, but it's in a very sanitized way. And then they go out into the world, and then they sort of feel, but they just sort of engage in the filth. Right? Yeah. They kind of have that choice. And I don't think that really, I think it's doing a great disservice to a lot of people. I think especially for Kanye West to come out and talk about porn. Here's the truth. I think anyone under the age of 30, probably 99% of men, have struggled with pornography or some kind of sexual issue. Because it's not the same as drugs. Like, I don't need to, it's pumped into my phone. Like, I don't need to wrap the surgical tubing around in a belt and freebase. It's just like, oh, let me check my email and tits.
Yeah, exactly. Or every billboard or every store that you
Every
walk by in the
single
mall,
billboard.
you know?
Right.
And that's one thing. When you go to church, you have a lot of Christians who go up and like, the Lord freed me from heroin. And you're like, oh, what a wonderful story. You know, like, the Lord freed me from violence. I was an MS-13. It's like, great. But then when the conversation gets to the sexual problems that a lot of people have because people get really, really quiet. Kanye West promoted this sort of cultural debauchery, right? He was out there. If you listen to his albums, they're X-rated, some of them. Particularly if you listen to this one bit with Chris Rock and this girl saying Yeezy taught me. I can't remember the track, but it was on, what's that one, the red album that has all the lights on it? Is it Twisted Fantasy? My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy. Wow, that's a mouthful. Yeah, I want it to be extra long so people, when they go to pronounce it, there's no mistake. Huh? But he promoted all of that for a long time, and now he's saying I was wrong about that and still being forthcoming about that. There's real value in that. And I'm not saying some Christians just say, I am what I am. No, listen, you should change, right? So we either have sin completely covered or hushed, or people feel ashamed to talk about it with church, or you go out into the world like hip hop or anywhere in the entertainment industry where it's glorified. But you should be able to talk about it with other Christians, right? Not without glorifying it, without praising it, but saying, hey, how do we come to a solution? But we don't. So it's either complete silence or glorification of sin. And Kanye promoted the culture for a long time. A lot of the time we don't really understand this. Artists not only sometimes create culture, but they still do live in the culture.
Yeah.
They are a byproduct of culture. It's kind of like a never-ending loop. And so he was a byproduct of culture, which he would tell you. He's talked about this, and then he said, and I promoted this. It's almost like a kid who's bullied at home, so they go and bully other people. And he went out, he feels guilty about it, and he says, I was promoting this, I don't know how many kids I corrupted. Whether you agree with him or not now that he was corrupting people, I do, to a certain extent. And this is the whole reason that we need Jesus in the first place. Some people are further along the trail than others. I think, as it relates to Kanye West, I always have to give respect to a guy who has the balls to hang himself out there, and he's doing that. I don't know how long-lived it will be. I hope it's a lifelong journey. I think everyone out there, you can be apprehensive, and you should be apprehensive, but also support the guy because he's taking a risk, a genuine risk, and he does need some support. And I think if you approach it that way, it's a balanced way, it's a healthful way to approach it, it's the way that we can most serve someone who's new to sort of their spiritual journey, and no one is going to have egg on their face for doing that. Okay, if you enjoyed this segment, subscribe, hit the notification bell, bookmark the page, but most importantly, join Mug Club at louderearthcrowder.com/Mug Club. This is taken from a show, a life advice segment that's like 60,000 minutes longer? No, it's about 45 minutes longer, but you get a full show behind the paywall every day that you don't get here on YouTube because we've been demonetized a whole long time ago, and I don't expect that to be fixed.